This is the story of Lori L. Brown of Raeford, North Carolina. A woman whose life came to a mysterious halt in 2019. A woman who vanished without warning, leaving her family with years of uncertainty, and whose fate was not fully understood until 2025. This long exploration will take us step by step through what is known, what was reported, how investigators approached the case, and what final developments brought answers after so many years. It is a story of absence, of discovery, and of the challenges that missing person cases create for families, communities, and authorities alike. Lori was 51 years old when she was last seen. She lived in Raeford, the county seat of Hoke County in southeastern North Carolina. Raeford is a modest community surrounded by the open landscapes of the Sandhills, a place where people tend to know one another and news travels quickly. For Lori, Raeford was home, and yet on November 8th of 2019 she disappeared in circumstances that still leave questions unanswered today. She left behind not only her daily life, but also her personal belongings. Among those belongings were dentures that she relied upon, a fact that stood out to investigators, because few people would leave behind something so essential if they were intending to travel on their own. The dentures remained in her home, along with other possessions, creating the first clear sign that something had gone very wrong. As the days passed without word from her, family and friends grew more concerned. When the missing person report was made, the Hoke County Sheriff's Office took on the investigation. Detectives quickly realized the unusual nature of the case. Lori had not packed, she had not spoken to relatives, and she had not been sighted in the days immediately following her last known appearance. Authorities classified her case as endangered, and missing person bulletins went out with her description. They noted that she might also be known by another last name, Goodwin, and they shared her physical features with the hope someone might recognize her if she was seen elsewhere. In the months after she vanished, investigators began following leads. Some reports came in suggesting she might have been seen in the Fayetteville area, specifically along Highway 301, near a coliseum, and near a Walmart in that part of town. Fayetteville, being a larger city close to Raeford, was a natural place to search, but these potential sightings were never confirmed. None of the witnesses could provide details strong enough to prove they had actually seen Lori. That meant the case remained open, but stagnant. Over time, her case entered national missing person databases, including NamUs, the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System, and was profiled on nonprofit websites like the Charley Project. These platforms ensured that Lori's information was preserved, searchable, and viewable by the public, in the hopes someone would recognize her picture or details. For Lori's family, the years stretched long. Each anniversary of her disappearance passed without clarity. Each possible tip raised hope only to fade away again. The trail remained cold. And even though the sheriff's office would occasionally reissue bulletins to renew attention, no confirmed progress was shared publicly. In September of 2023, nearly 4 years after she had disappeared, new possible sightings were again reported in Fayetteville. The idea that she might still be alive gave her family and others a fragile sense of hope. But as with earlier reports, nothing definitive came from those tips. Without photographs, clear identifying details, or corroborating evidence, law enforcement could not verify that Lori had been seen. Then came September of 2024. That month would bring the discovery that changed everything. Contractors were working near Clear Springs Road, a rural stretch of Aberdeen, about 20 minutes from Raeford. It was routine work, part of clearing land and preparing it for development. As they worked, they came across something unexpected. On the ground, partially concealed by soil, leaves, and natural growth, were what appeared to be human remains. The workers immediately stopped their work and called authorities. The Hoke County Sheriff's Office responded, along with the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation. The area was taped off, and a careful search began. Investigators combed through the site, documenting every detail, photographing the scene, and collecting any potential evidence. The location itself was remote enough that remains could have gone unnoticed for years. The wooded environment, seasonal changes, and the natural concealment of fallen leaves and underbrush had kept the discovery hidden until chance and human activity brought it to light. The remains were skeletal, indicating they had been there for a significant length of time. Alongside them, investigators looked for personal effects that might help with identification. Sometimes clothing, remnants, jewelry, or other items survive long after soft tissue is gone. What exactly was found has not been disclosed to the public, but we do know that the remains were deemed suspicious enough to warrant DNA testing. Detectives turned to Lori's family. They collected a DNA sample from a relative of hers to send to the North Carolina State Crime Lab. The state lab is equipped to compare DNA from bones or teeth against living relatives, even when samples are degraded. The process can take months, as samples must be carefully cleaned, analyzed, and matched against records. For months, the family waited once again. They had endured nearly 5 years without answers. And now they had to wait again, as science worked to confirm whether this discovery was indeed Lori. On March 17th of 2025, the answer came. The state medical examiner's office in Raleigh confirmed that the remains belonged to Lori L. Brown. Her family was notified. For the sheriff's office, the case was officially closed as a missing person investigation. For the family, the burden of not knowing was finally lifted, though the confirmation also meant facing the difficult reality that she was no longer alive. Authorities announced that no foul play was suspected in Lori's death. That means investigators did not find evidence to suggest that someone else was responsible. Without clear signs of trauma, they could not classify her case as criminal. The cause of death was not made public, and it remains possible that factors such as a medical emergency, an accident, or environmental exposure led to her passing. The site where her remains were found, Clear Springs Road in Aberdeen, is not far from her home in Raeford. Why she ended up there, how she traveled there, and what occurred in her final moments are questions that remain unanswered. Investigators did not disclose whether she had been there since the time of her disappearance, or if she had moved around before arriving at that location. What we do know is that Lori was found only because chance brought contractors to that spot. Without their work, her remains might have remained undiscovered for years longer. The discovery illustrates how missing persons are sometimes found, not through direct investigation, but by accident. When someone stumbles across evidence in the course of unrelated activity, forensic science did the rest. Even skeletal remains, when carefully handled, can be matched to relatives through DNA analysis. Lori's case highlights how essential it is for family members to provide reference samples in missing person cases, so that when remains are found, they can be identified. When the news of her identification broke, the community responded with sorrow and relief. There was grief in knowing the final outcome, but also gratitude that the long period of uncertainty was over. For her loved ones, knowing her fate provided closure, even if it left many questions unanswered. Law enforcement emphasized that with the identification, the case was closed. There were no arrests, no charges, and no ongoing criminal investigation. No public reward has been associated with the case since the remains were identified. Authorities have maintained that while her disappearance was mysterious, her passing does not appear to have involved criminal action. The discovery site itself carries significance. Clear Springs Road is in a rural part of Aberdeen, an area with wooded terrain, patches of development, long stretches of land where someone could easily go unnoticed. It is not far from major roads, yet isolated enough that someone could remain hidden for years. For Lori to be found there underscores how proximity to familiar places does not always guarantee discovery, especially when natural concealment is at play. From November of 2019 through March of 2025, Lori's case demonstrates the difficult reality of many missing person cases. Long stretches with no answers, leads that go nowhere, families left waiting. In this case, resolution came only because chance intervened. Contractors working in an area stumbled upon remains that otherwise might have remained hidden indefinitely. While there have been no arrests connected to her case and no announced reward at the time of her identification, the sheriff's office has always encouraged anyone with information about her disappearance or last known movements to contact them. Even with the case classified as closed, details about what happened in the days after November 8th of 2019 could still hold meaning for the family and for the historical record of the case. The narrative of Lori's disappearance can also be placed in the broader context of missing persons across North Carolina and the country. Thousands of individuals go missing each year. Some are found quickly, others are not. Some are located alive, others only through discovery of remains. Forensic science has advanced to the point where many unidentified remains have been matched in recent years to long-standing missing person cases, giving families long-awaited answers. Lori's identification falls into this category, resolved by the careful preservation of samples and the matching capabilities of modern labs. It is worth reflecting on the timeline in more detail. Her case was declared resolved, with authorities stating they did not suspect foul play. Even in the absence of criminal charges, Lori's story carries weight. For family members, closure after years of not knowing can allow mourning to take a different form. Instead of hoping she might return, they can lay her memory to rest, knowing she has been found. For the community, it is a reminder of how fragile safety can be, how quickly someone can vanish without clear explanation, and how long answers may take. In considering what might have happened to Lori, we can only outline possibilities. She may have experienced a medical emergency and collapsed in an area where she could not be found. She may have wandered from her home in distress and never returned. She may have left her residence intending to travel a short distance and succumbed to elements or health issues. Without explicit statements from investigators, speculation remains speculation. What we know is that her belongings were left, her dentures remained behind, and eventually her remains were located away from her residence. The sheriff's office has thanked those who provided tips over the years. Even though none of the reported sightings turned out to be confirmed, public vigilance is an important part of these cases. The public notices social media posts and repeated reminders to check if anyone had seen her all serve to keep her name circulating until the end. As of now, there are no indications of new developments, no suggestions of further investigation into suspects, and no new appeals for information with reward offers. The official stance is that the case is resolved, though questions still linger in the minds of those who knew her. Reflecting on Lori's life requires acknowledging that much of her story is not in the public record. Her career, her friendships, her routines, these personal details have not been shared widely. That creates a gap in understanding who she was beyond the circumstances of her disappearance. Yet even in that absence, the case resonates as another reminder that behind every missing person entry is a person who lived, with loved ones, and whose story matters. The long stretch between her disappearance and the discovery of her remains demonstrates the challenges authorities face. Even when a person vanishes in a relatively small community, if there are no witnesses, no surveillance footage, and no clear path to follow, cases can stall for years. What ultimately resolves them is often a mix of persistence, technological tools, and sheer chance. As this narrative comes to a close, the main takeaway is this. Lori L. Brown disappeared suddenly in 2019, was missing for more than 5 years, and was ultimately identified in 2025 after her remains were discovered. Her family finally received answers, even if those answers were not complete. Her case highlights the importance of forensic science, the role of community awareness, and the long wait that so many families endure. For viewers and listeners, the memory of Lori is now part of the collective record. Her name, her story, her absence, and her identification all form the timeline of a case that stretched over half a decade. It is an example of how, even when hope dims, eventual answers can emerge. And it is a reminder to continue supporting missing person investigations, to share information responsibly, and to honor those who can no longer speak for themselves. Thank you for watching Fatal Secrets of True Crime. Subscribe for more stories like this. Real crimes, hidden truths, and the secrets they tried to bury. Your support helps keep these stories alive and the pressure on for answers. Till next time, remember, every secret eventually comes to light.